Welcome to Community Connect, where we are going to introduce Vancouver Island University students to resources, services, and businesses in the Vancouver Island community, and how to connect with them both during the pandemic and in the future. My name is Allie White, and I'll be your host today, and for our first episode, we'll be speaking with Theo of Fredrich's Honey, based in Cedar in beautiful South Nanaimo. Hi, Theo, for our first episode of Community Connect. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Allie. Thanks for having me.
You're in South Nanaimo in Cedar, and so that's actually really close to my house. So we've met each other before, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, because I'm sure the bees don't stop.
They never stop.
They never stop. How did you get involved with the honey business?
So the honey business, my dad started back in 1966. So I grew up at this farm, here, kind of involved as a kid, helping my dad with the bees and with the honey business and delivering honey and moving the bees up into the mountains and that sort of thing. So I grew up with it, and then moved away after high school and went to Vancouver, and then long story short, eventually I came back 11 years ago and then took over the business because my dad's now 87, so he was 77, so starting to think about retiring. So at that point I stepped in and took over the business. Yeah.
Are you thinking that your children will do the same, or?
I don't think so. If I had to guess now, I would say no. I don't think so, but you never know. My kids help with the bees now, especially now that we're, the kids aren't in school. So they work in the shop, they label jars, they fill honey, they pour wax, and they also help with the bees. So they'll come out with me and they'll help me work the bees. It is physical labor too, so it's good exercise. Mm-hmm. So
your father, Theo Senior, so I've met him before, and he's done some tours for some of our students. He actually got stung, and he just said he almost is not even affected anymore. So is that the same case with you? You've built up a tolerance to stings? And
I think that's not that my dad does that for show. To be honest, it hurts. It still hurts.
Okay.
But I've seen him get stung. It's funny, if he has a group of people, he won't wear a veil or anything, and I'll see him getting stung, and I know that it hurts, but he won't kind of lead on because it's part of his thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you definitely you get used to it, but it still hurts, and you can develop an allergy as you get older. My wife Taylor is deathly allergic to bees now, so she can't. Yeah, so she can't work with the bees at all. She has
definitely a risk of the field, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So she walks around with an EpiPen around our place.
Of course.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah. Now, what about your kids then? So what do you do for protective gear for them when they help you?
They just wear the same stuff I do. So a veil, gloves, sort of cut off socks that protect. Your gloves are on here, and then your veil goes to here, and then there's this part, kind of your wrist that's always exposed. Mm-hmm. So they wear basically cut off socks that kind of cover that area. And they haven't been stung too many times, so it's been okay.
From start to finish, what does it look like to come up with a jar of honey?
Yeah, so it takes a long time. It's kind of where we it's different everywhere, right? But where we are on the island, we sort of start working the bees in February when they come out of winter. So they kind of go dormant between November and February. And during that time, they cluster into balls for warmth. So they don't really do anything during those months. And then in February, once it starts to warm up over 5 degrees, they break that cluster, and then they go out and they start foraging and cleaning up the hive and that sort of thing. So we start working with them then, make sure that they have enough food, and then they build up all spring, And then the honey flow, like honey production is really only from, say, end of May to like middle of August. So it's like only like 3 months, 3 or 4 months, where they produce it. So during that, so leading up to that, we just basically make sure they have enough food, they have enough room, that they're healthy. And then we move them out to farms for pollination. So like blueberry farms, cranberry farms, apple orchards, that sort of thing. And then once basically spring hits and it gets warm enough, that's when they start producing honey.
You basically work like nonstop for 3 months. Weekend.
Yeah, well, yeah, all the time. Yeah. So it's like, but it's like I go by the weather, so I'm always watching the weather. So depending on, because we can't really work the bees in the rain, and then also if it gets hot, you have to kind of be ready for it so that you have honey boxes on the hives, because the boxes where they lay all the baby bees basically are called the brood boxes. Those are different from the honey boxes. So I got to make sure that I have honey boxes on if there's going to be a honey flow and all that kind of thing. So I'm always watching the weather, looking to see what the flowers are doing. And then, yeah. And then when it's go time, it's like you got to do what you got to do to make sure they're ready. So once they do produce honey in the hive, like they basically will move the nectar from the flowers into the comb, and then basically that goes from like a nectar to a honey. We take those boxes off, and then we smoke the boxes to get all the bees off. We remove them from the hive, and then we bring them back to the farm, where we have basically it's a honey extractor. So it's a big kind of giant centrifuge. So we take the frames out, and then we put them in this centrifuge, and it basically spins all the honey out. So it just kind of whips around, and all the honey that's in the cells flies out, and then it goes through a filter and then into a tank, and then from that tank we fill it into a jar. So it's kind of like that part hasn't changed in like 60, 80 years. Like the technology gets a little different, but it's the same thing. And that's kind of the crazy thing. Like some years we'll get 10 days of, so like 90% of the honey will be made in 10 days time, but it takes 6 months lead up to kind of get the bees ready and everything ready. So it's sort of odd. It's kind of odd that way.
And so your kind of summer break, when does that happen? In the fall then?
My summer break?
Yeah. Or your break.
I don't usually get much of a summer break. Like once the bees are done pollinating at the farms down here, we load them up on our trucks, and then we move them way up into the mountains. So like the center of Vancouver Island, like up to about 4,500 feet is the highest yard. And they spend the summer up there from like mid-June till end of August. So once they're up there, I can take like a little break, like maybe a couple days here and there, because that's sort of like the final big push. There's nothing I can do with the bees at that point to improve them. Like I can't feed them anymore. I can't treat them anymore. Like that part's kind of done. Now they just, once they're up there, they just are in production mode. We try and do it by crop. So the first big crop is like blackberry honey, which is probably going to be blooming here in the next 10 days. And that's about a 21-day bloom. So that's like the first one that we try to collect, and then we take off the hive, and then we'll move them up into the mountains. And then it's fireweed, which is that really tall, it's like a really tall pink flower that grows where they used to clear cut. So, up in the mountains, they clear cut, they used to burn the ground, and then the fireweed would come up. And then after that is fir honey, which is from the fir tree. And that's like a really dark honey that comes from the mountains as well. So we try and take off each individual one so that we can separate it and sell it separately.
And I know when we've been there before, we've done taste tests where we've been able to see there's a little bit of a difference in the taste depending on where the honey is from.
Totally, yeah. It looks different. It's got like a different color and a different taste and different thickness and everything.
Because of the pandemic, you guys are basically doing an outside store right now. So people can either order online and you'll sell it or deliver it.
Yep, that's right, in Nanaimo, yeah.
Okay, so on the Fredrich's Honey website, what is the website?
Fredrichshoney.com.
Okay.
And yeah, and
And you can also come by, right? And pick it up on your little stand outside.
yeah, there's free pickup. But if you live in Nanaimo, I'll deliver it to you as well. I'll leave it at your doorstep.
And so how are people paying for that? Just online or?
Yeah, just usually with credit card or e-transfer. People that come to the shop, lots of people pay by cash that are using the little table outside the store.
Yeah.
So there's like a bucket, like just a little bucket, and people put their money in, and I haven't had any issues so far. Like everybody's pretty honest. So
Honey all the way through all the stores. So which are the major? So I've seen it in Thrifties, for example.
yeah,
What are the other store chains that you have it in?
like Save On Foods, Country Grocer, 49th Parallel, and then like Naked Naturals, but mainly just on the central Vancouver Island. So we haven't really, our issue is like production. So I used to sell lots to Victoria, but then that got like kind of too busy and we only produce a limited amount of honey. Mm-hmm. So I have to kind of make sure that I have enough for the store, like the farm store. And if I'd like love to produce more, but it's kind of we only produce what we can. So and sometimes we can produce a lot and sometimes it's not as good. It depends on the weather and the water table and all that kind of stuff. But there's lots of like bees kind of, like they have a bit of a tough time, they have a tough time with wasps and hornets, and there's lots of things that like to eat bees and honey. So there's lots. Yeah, there's like the big blue dragonflies, they eat bees. There's like a bird that eats bees. Bears are like a big problem. We had a bear here in the fall that we were able to trap in those big tube. The big tube. It's like the big. It's a live trap, so it doesn't hurt.
You guys did it yourself?
No, the conservation guy dropped it off, but yeah, it was coming by every night and eating hives and the bees. So
that's a good biology lesson for your kids, to just stand outside and wait for the bear to get on the trap.
I know.
At home.
I know. I felt bad because it was just hungry. Like it was just a skinny bear, so it was just hungry, right?
Yeah.
They said they relocated it, so yeah, we'll see. Yeah. See if it comes back or not.
Worldwide, there's kind of been that storyline of bees being at risk, and so are you finding that that's the same kind of thing on the island, or are we in a little bit of a bubble?
No, I don't. I think especially the last 3 years, I think pesticides and herbicides are terrible for bees. And I think in agriculture, we're tied in with agriculture, and so I try and be really careful with where I put the bees, for pollination. Mm-hmm. So I always talk to the farmers before I go there to make sure that they're not spraying, or find out when they're gonna spray so that the bees aren't there. But the issue is because the bees will fly up to 5 kilometers from their hive. So maybe the farm we're at doesn't spray, but if one of the neighboring ones does, and they kind of get into that, then you kind of have the same issues. So it's a problem, for sure. But countries like France and Germany, I think, are banning a lot of the really bad pesticides. Yeah. So I'm hoping Canada kind of follows suit with that, because they're gonna need to. It's unsustainable if farmers are using this and it's killing bees, because farmers need bees for pollination, so it's sort of counterproductive.
I love seeing the bees in my yard, and so I'll definitely head down to your little stand and pick up some stuff. I know I can get honey, and I can also get soap and beeswax candles, and so
yeah,
there's kind of a table.
Yeah, anytime, just let me know. Or just show up.
Or just show up.
Yeah, it's
there
all there.
Specific hours right now that the table's out?
It's out all the time, so you can come by whenever you like. Yeah, and we're gonna reopen the shop, I think, June 3rd.
Okay.
So yeah, so we're just working on the plan for that. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Well, anytime. I'm always happy to do it. So
Yeah, no,
it's
great.
nice to see
And
you.
hopefully, some of the VIU students and staff that are listening have learned a little bit today, and hopefully they know that the Friedrich's honey is local, because they probably
Yeah,
seen it, but maybe they just haven't had any connection with where it's from yet. So
yeah. And they can always email me at, they go on the website, fredrichshoney.com. You could just click the email and send me a message if you have any questions or anything. I'm happy to answer it. I'll try my best.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Theo.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.
And that's it for our first episode of Community Connect. Thank you for joining us and learning more about the honey business with Theo from Fredrich's Honey. Join us next time when we speak with the owners of the Maley House restaurant.